8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. MGF.
Hey everybody, welcome to the MGF Podcast. This is episode 24 of the show with a temporary name where we talk movies, shows, games, Lego, and whatever else. Joining me as always is Tait.
What's up, guys? We're actually talking about Lego today.
We are
Woohoo!
talking about Lego. I think Lego are this is the two biggest topics for today because, as mentioned last week, it did finally happen. My first Avengers Endgame showcase finally made it to the channel, which was very exciting. It was a lot of work to actually put the video together upon finally completing those two figures, but it was a really, really solid video. I think easily my second favorite showcase I have ever made, and a lot of people really seem to enjoy it, so that got me very excited because it's kind of like the whole video. Not only are they my best two Captain, like my best Captain America and my best Iron Man, but it is my best video that relates to those characters on the channel that I've ever done. And that was the whole goal, to not just make the best Captain America and the best Iron Man, but to make the best benchmark video as a kind of send off for the two of them, because I've loved the two characters and the two actors, and then what they've done for the MCU so much over the last 10 years. And the big thing though is, and Tate, I talked to you a lot about this, but I don't really get to talk about it a lot. Even on my second channel, MGF Extra, that I post on here and there, I really don't get to go as far into the making of my figures as I would like. And that's crazy because I do a making of video, I do the showcase, I talk about it on my second channel, and it still doesn't fully capture what really goes into the making of my custom minifigures as I continue to paint cleaner, as I continue to not cut any corners, which I never really did before, but now it's just I've become more obsessive with accuracy and what's really possible and making sure I execute to the best of my ability. So all of that combined results in record times for how long it takes for me to make figures now. Because we don't have any photos pulled up of my older figures from, like, say, Infinity War even, or Captain America Civil War, or anything that came before. But they were simpler figures. You go back and you look at my Captain America from Infinity War, it was a simpler figure. There weren't as many 3D elements. I was using Lego Torso as a base. I had very inaccurate and simplistic legs with very thick lines. These figures were my complete and total reinvention of everything I had done before to make sure that it was the definitive culmination of everything that I had done before for the culmination of the MCU and everything that's come before. And so in this breakdown, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking today, but I appreciate everybody joining in. At any point, if I start to sound kind of repetitive because of what I already said in the showcase, it's going to kind of be inevitable. But I don't want to keep regurgitating that. Obviously, this is the last new Cap and the last new Iron Man that I get to make for new suits, that is. But yeah, so I knew, like, going into the making of these two figures, starting out, Captain America #1 was going to have to be vastly different. Iron Man, I could use various different. Uh, strategies from what I had done previously with, say, the Iron Man Mark 50 from Infinity War. So, getting started with the Mark 85, I basically started with the helmet, and I used the same metallic red paint that I've always used. And I was looking at the helmet, and before I could even apply any paint, I was like, oh man. And I was like, oh man, this is going to have to take some sanding. And so as I'm doing this, I basically started by sanding the top. And this is something that I usually don't like to do, because what I would usually like to do is keep Lego's gold color for the face mask because it is kind of nice. However, once I did that, I realized the back was also kind of thrown off now, and the whole top kind of had to be sanded a little bit before I could smooth the whole thing over. And yeah, so what's up, Camo Clone? How you doing? Yeah, so and basically once that was all done, I sent over I sent over a bunch of photos for Tate to use for this, and apparently he didn't get a single one of them. So this is going great.
Yeah, no,
But
Russ.
yeah,
I only have the edit, the
oh,
picture you posted on
nice.
Instagram.
So that means we are missing literally all the material for the podcast. That's awesome.
Oh
Um,
gosh. And then
but
my stream. I want to say real quick that my streaming software started lagging, so that's why there was the MGF Live logo while he was talking. I was trying to switch it. I was like, what do I do? Oh my
um,
gosh. Anyway.
yeah. So it was definitely quite a process, and that was just with the helmet alone. I mean, I actually worked on the helmet on and off throughout the whole process, so it really didn't all come together with the helmet until like the very end because I had painted the back lights of the helmet on like super last minute. Um, and again, because unfortunately we don't have any, we don't have a single one of the photos I put together for this. Um, you can check out the showcase; it's on the main channel. So I'm just, I guess, kind of doing an audio commentary for things you've already seen, which is kind of a shame.
Can
Sorry about that for
can
not
you
having a
resend
single one of those
those?
photos.
Can you resend them?
Um,
Or
I mean, I could try, but we're kind of already going, and this is not exactly working out. I mean, if you guys could bear with us, I mean, I can certainly
oh
try.
my fucking god,
Um,
Ross, they're in my spam.
they're in your spam.
Why are
That's
they in my
awesome.
spam? I get the.
That's awesome.
Oh my
Okay.
god. Well, I'm glad I checked. God, this is a rocky start. Jesus Christ. Why are they in my spam folder? You send me an email a week and it's all the podcast stuff.
Yeah, that's great. That's really awesome.
Wow. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gmail.
Well, how about this? Because this just started off so horrendous and horribly, let's just hang out for a bit. Because hopefully, those, even though they're like a couple megabytes each, they should all download and you should be able to pull them up, I hope.
I have the Iron Man
Um,
up right now.
okay.
I'm so frustrated. Why is it in my spam folder, dude? What, you've been
um,
sending me emails at like the middle of the night that I'm not seeing,
no,
and like it's just defaulting.
I don't know. There we go. There it is. Yes,
Jesus.
Camo Clone. That was the F bomb. We already lost it, like straight off the bat. Okay. So now that we are a solid 7 minutes in, while
Well,
I
here's your
basically
picture.
just been stalling, there is the first picture of Iron Man, and hopefully they can get the rest of them to
I,
like downloaded
yeah,
um,
yeah.
as I talk here. But yeah, so the process basically started off with sanding the helmet first, which again I usually don't like to do because you'll notice with past Iron Man suits, I've always kind of maintained the gold color that Lego used because I really liked it. I always liked the gold color that Lego actually manufactured the face masks with. But it wasn't really an option here because I had to sand the top because the Mark 85 helmet is just really smooth. And Lego's Iron Man helmet is based off of the Mark 7, which is a design from 2011 that they made building up to the first Avengers film in 2012. So it's vastly outdated. And even for the Infinity War Mark 50 last year, I had basically um, just not even done anything about that and just painted over those rivets and just painted over those different angles. And this time, though, I wanted to make the helmet more accurate, and so I sanded it, smoothed it all over, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, and there are other options that I certainly considered. I mean, obviously, sculpting my own Mark 85 helmet was on the table. Using a custom helmet from Tuminio was an option that I considered very last minute. That ultimately I decided against because I think it would really wind up being too big. And a big part of this too is the HUD painted inside. So the HUD is pretty much the same design as the one that I painted for Infinity War. I did make a few changes in there, but it's for the most part the same design, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. But yeah, now as far as the rest of the suit goes, when making this figure, there were things that I wanted to avoid that I accidentally did with the Mark 50 last year that weren't that big of a mistake, that weren't that big of a deal, but that did bother me. So the big thing that I changed with Infinity War with the Mark 50 last year that, of course, I carried over to Endgame was the minimalist sculpting work, right? So I didn't want to keep doing bulky armor chest pieces. I stopped that a while ago. But I also wanted to make sure I did better with the sculpting this time. So that meant basically sculpting the chest to be a little smoother, not have a big crease running under the arc reactor, not having the arc reactor be too small or too high up, and actually having the depth in between the two plates on the chest up on the top of the torso. And I managed to pull that off, and I managed to also sculpt much more accurate shoulders. They weren't just simple shapes. They're actually sculpted pretty accurately to the proportions that you see on the actual shoulder pads for the Mark 85 in the movie. But I mean, all of this is a pretty slow and tedious process. And what makes up a lot of it is just studying the designs, just staring at reference, gathering reference, and just trying to make sense of all of it and trying to decide how it's going to be translated onto a Lego minifigure. So that basically meant just staring at the reference and being very intentional about what was painted on, while also trying to be as symmetrical as I could. And I think that certainly happened with the arms, especially. And usually when you see my figures, like the most uneven my figures get is usually on the arms. But I mean, over the years, I think I've gotten better at making the arms even, which I'm definitely pretty proud of. And once I got through the torso, which was, God, at least 2 days of work, I want to say, I moved on to the arms, which I already talked about. So I'm kind of talking about this backwards. But then essentially, the next thing was, because I wanted to get the preview photo out, that big Iron Man sacrifice snap edit that I did, I wanted to get that out. And so I had to paint up the Nano gauntlet. And Hot Toys has already released several images of Nano gauntlets. If you guys don't know who Nano gauntlets are, if you guys don't know who Hot Toys is, just go ahead and Google Hot Toys Nano gauntlet, and they'll come up. And they've just already released images of several different ones. And so I had actually used pretty inaccurate reference, which was a big thing. And so that Nano gauntlet looked okay, but it was inaccurate. And it really served its purpose for the photo. But then several months into the process, when I'm coming up closer and closer to the end, when I only have like the back of the legs and the back of the torso to do, Speedy Bricks on Instagram posts his with smaller Infinity Stones and more detail as a result painted onto his Nano Gauntlet hand for his Mark 85. And I was like, that is so cool. I should definitely try that. And so I made a version 2 and was able to do the exact same thing. And I am so glad I did, because if you look, I think Tait is trying to get the whole shot in the frame still. I don't know. But essentially, the more accurate Nano Gauntlet obviously has the smaller Infinity Stones, has more detail. That's the one you saw in the showcase. Whereas the version 1, which did not make it into the showcase because it wound up, being not only inaccurate, but just too simplistic, and the stones being unnecessarily big, that one pretty much got scrapped. And but on top of that, I also did a separate pair of hands, which had to be as symmetrical as I could make them. I think they turned out really good. And that's those are the hands that are pretty much just there because I didn't want to have an Iron Man suit that would be stuck with the Nano Gauntlet hand. And so I made sure to make a separate set of just standard hands for him, which I think turned out looking pretty awesome. So yeah, but if we go ahead and move on to the wings, looking back at the main picture, was definitely kind of challenging because the wings were from Tuminio. And at first, and this is stuff I couldn't really go into in the showcase either, I was just like kind of dreading how I was going to make the Mark 85's wings. And of course, they're called like nano lightning refocusers. So I was like, oh man, how am I going to do these? Because it would have been some of the most challenging sculpting work I've certainly ever attempted. So I was like, okay, well, me and Andrew over at AV Figures worked together last year to make the wings for the Mark 85, or the Mark 50s, rather. And those came out awesome. So I was at Star Wars Celebration Chicago, and I'm like, hey, Vu, check out these wings that are going to be on Iron Man and Endgame. What do you think? Can we do it? And he was like, yes, it's going to be challenging, but yeah, probably. It's just going to take a while. And I was like, okay. And so that's fine, because I wasn't really gunning for a release date showcase, right? So thankfully, I want to say a few weeks to a month after Celebration Chicago or something. I see Tuminio's post on Instagram of the wings that he had designed and then made himself. I don't know what material he uses to cast his parts, Tuminio, but it's pretty great. It's like this clear, thick plastic. It kind of has a similar texture to like dried hot glue almost. It's clear and kind of looks relatively similar, but obviously that's not the same substance at all. Point is, he hooked me up, made sure I got a set of those wings. And by the time they got there, I had painted them all up in a base color of black so that they would look like something for the making of video. And so when I did the making of video, you saw the wings in the base color of black that I painted them in. And one thing that I just did not expect was how long it was going to take to paint those wings. Now, guys, I am a massive Halo fan. And I even mentioned this in the showcase, but I cut it. I started reading the Forerunner books. There's a trilogy. It's the Forerunner trilogy of novels that covers the entire history of the beings in Halo, like the prehistoric advanced beings that pretty much created the Halo rings and all that stuff. Incredible series, incredibly detailed, gives you the full experience of that entire race. I got through at least one full book and like a quarter of the next in the trilogy just painting the wings over like a 2 to 4 day period. And it was really tedious. And this is stuff that I also couldn't mention in the showcase either because I was pressed for time. A big part, like two of the challenges that added even more time to painting the entire wing set was basically the problem. What like the two main problems were on top of just being really intentional and organized about how I was applying the paint and being really intentional and organized about the different layers I was going with. The corners were a problem because those little gold tips that you see and the corners and the tops, I was handling those the whole time I was painting them. And so I made sure to paint those last, but I also had to seal them over. And that was a really big, important thing. And you also notice kind of on the back that some of the matte red highlights do actually shine. That's all sealant too. And in between those wings, it's really tough to get paint in there. And so that was definitely really tedious. I couldn't mention that in the video either. But yeah, and the back of the figure was, of course, like the last thing I had painted. Because what I kind of do when making figures is I'll do the head, the torso, and the arms first. That way I can do a teaser, post it on Instagram. I mean, obviously all the progress goes up over on Patreon first, like all the time. Tait, are you even still there?
Yeah, dude, I'm here. I'm just muted so you don't hear background noise. It is very hectic at my house.
Oh no.
So, yeah.
I know this is just kind of like the Ross breakdown, and Tait's just kind of here. I feel kind of bad.
Yeah, but it's gonna be the Tait yells about liberals when the Joker well, not about liberals because I'm not gonna yell at liberals during the Joker section, but during the Joker section I have some strong opinions I'm gonna share. So.
Okay. But dude, yeah, like, please feel free to pitch in and chime in at any point.
Hey man, I feel super bummed with that I couldn't find that email and it was in my spam box. I'm still stuck on that, dude. I feel so bad.
That's okay. It's okay. But yeah, man. So the back of the torso was definitely relatively tedious. It wasn't as bad as the front. The front was pretty painstaking. I'm not gonna lie. But the back went a little smoother and wound up being pretty accurate. I thought the paint I was layering onto the back was going to be a little bit thicker than I would have liked, but it wound up really working out. And yeah, and then of course, like some other things that I had to consider first were the main aggressive head for Tony Stark. So this head was kind of a challenge at first because after Endgame had come out, you know, the moment where Tony does the snap and various other scenes were leaking all over the place. So I was like, okay, I can just grab a screenshot from one of the leaks and I'll have more than enough reference for Tony Stark's face when he does the snap and what he looked like in the final battle and all the gashes and cuts that he had. I couldn't find any of that. So I actually, for the first preview that went up over my Instagram and Twitter, I had to use freaking fan art, I'm pretty sure. And then it was only after Endgame had come out on digital that I was able to go back and kind of update the cuts and gashes to make them as accurate as possible. And funny story with this head, not only did I repaint the cuts, but I also repainted the facial hair. So the facial hair is drastically different from what you saw in that first preview I did when he's doing the snap. And you even see this in the showcase. So like when I'm doing the intro for Iron Man, that whole really cool edit, when you get to the end and you see that preview, I mean, you can still see the outdated Nano gauntlet, the outdated cuts on his face, the outdated facial hair is all still there, because obviously that photo is outdated and from back in May. But essentially, I did this showcase just last week, and this has never happened to me before with any Tony Stark face I've ever painted. I was looking at the photo that I was making for like Flickr and Instagram and all those places, like the final shot of just the two of them edited together in a nice collage. Basically, I noticed there was a little piece missing from the main gash on the right of his head. And I was like, oh no, what happened? I didn't, and thankfully that way it wasn't it. Because then I'm checking the showcase and I'm like, oh no, did it look this way in the showcase? And I just didn't notice. Thankfully, it must have happened after I filmed. And so I went back and I corrected it, and I actually put sealant over the cuts on his face. So you can't really see it in this photo too well, but there is actually sealant over those cuts now. And on top of this, I toward the end of making the Mark 85, I painted up a secondary head. So the problem was I didn't want to just have a Tony Stark head with the red neck, the custom facial hair, the gashes from the final battle. I wanted to also have a standard Tony Stark head for photos, right? And other things. So I painted all of it again. I painted that facial hair and did all of that again for a second time.
That's an MGF moment right there. I mean, that's certified MGF moment.
And I'm happy with it, man. And I threw the Infinity War head in there off to the right, because you'll notice it does have the red neck painted around it. Because at first I was going to use the Infinity War Tony Stark head. And Tait, I mean, I imagine you'd probably agree, and I think a lot of people would agree if you really look at it. Lego's Tony Stark head update that they did for Infinity War, while it was cool at first, when you really compare it to the original Tony Stark head, the Infinity War variant off to the right there is actually worse and takes us further away from Tony Stark's likeness. I think the original Tony heads are the closest to Robert Downey Jr.'s likeness they ever actually got, and that was right out the gate with the very first one. And so I was like, even though I painted the red neck on the Infinity War head, I was like, I actually don't want to use this head anymore, even though I'd used it for Infinity War. So I went back and that's why I used the regular Tony Stark head. And that was also because even though the HUD printed on the other side of the Infinity War head is cool, I really needed that aggressive facial expression. And I really just thought overall the standard Tony Stark head where he's smiling too is just closer to Robert Downey Jr.'s likeness. I couldn't mention really any of that in the showcase. Like, you can see how rambly this can all really get.
And that's why we have the podcast to begin with. Woohoo!
That's exactly right, man. And like, on top of painting those heads, I also had to paint the hair. Now, what I've done previously for Tony Stark heads is like, if anything, I would basically just paint the hair in dark brown and done, right? Because Tony wasn't really graying or anything like that quite yet. But dude, in Infinity War, after the time jump, his hair is borderline blonde. But it's still brown with like these light blonde highlights with a little bit of gray in his facial hair. So I put those blonde highlights in the facial hair, went over it with dark brown on the face. But the hair, I painted in the dark brown and then dry brushed it with a khaki color and then more dark brown to balance it out. And then I kind of increased it on the sides a little bit. And it wound up looking really good and as close to, I think, that hair color that I could get. So I was really happy with how that turned out. And yeah, man. So other than that, I mean, I painted up the legs for the Mark 85. And this is also something I couldn't really mention in the showcase. Around the sides of the legs, you really can't see in this photo, but I mean, you can definitely check out the showcase. It's on the channel. around the sides of the photo, like around the sides of the figure's legs, I definitely had trouble because, and this might kind of ruin it for some people, if you saw the design work that I painted onto the sides of the legs, it was supposed to connect to the back, and it doesn't. Because in the movie, and it does, like that silver design you see on the back of the legs that continues onto the sides, you really can't see it in the main photo here, but again, showcased on the channel, it was supposed to connect, and it doesn't. And that's the one glaring inaccuracy on the figure, but I think it was okay. And one thing I totally forgot to mention in the actual showcase too was how this is the best arc reactor I have ever painted. I was really happy with how it turned out. It is multi-layered, it is proportionally correct, it is placed correctly, and it's clean, which is very tedious. And not
Ross,
something I thought would work out that well. Yeah.
But those lines on the leg, dude, I mean, you're just canceled, dude. This is curtains.
Yeah, man.
Absolute curtains, man. I'm sorry.
It is. It's curtains for the channel. It's the end. There's a slight inaccuracy on the sides of the legs. It is a game over.
Sorry, bro. Sorry. It's not my decision to make.
But hey, Tait. Yeah. Pretty good figure, huh?
Dude, no, this is freaking incredible. The thing, Ross, I think your biggest strong suit was waiting. It's supposed to jumping right into it. You took your time. You made a great looking figure. One of the best figures you've ever made. Definitely your best Iron Man suit.
Oh, hands down, yeah.
You took the time. You waited for correct reference. I mean, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. I mean, like usually Hot Toys figures are enough to make a figure. Almost always are enough. I mean, that's what I'm using for Black Widow and Ronin. But there was this site that I found toward the end that just had a full 360 of the entire suit's render. And I was like, where was this for the last 4 months? But yeah, I mean, a big part of why this figure and Cap took so long was just I wanted to make sure I did it right. But also because it's been a pretty weird year for me personally. I mean, it has been harder for me to sit down and get to work than probably any other year, or at least since 2017. And so I would go anywhere from 3 days to a week often without working on either of these two figures. And so that's a large part of why this took 4 months. And obviously, I mean, I'm going to try to get Black Widow and Ronin done and made within, the next 3 weeks or so. But yeah. So how about that Captain Marvel figure? Well, Ian, Rose in the chat there. I was talking to Tait about the Captain Marvel figure, and we don't have an actual picture of it. But he's talking about the Captain Marvel figure that I started back in February for the movie and never finished because Endgame happened, and I just kind of lost interest in finishing that figure. I could literally just finish the legs on that figure and the back and do the whole showcase, and I'm genuinely considering it just to have a video go up if I wind up running dry on content for the channel. So that's definitely a possibility. And I still do have that figure on my desk waiting for its moment. But Michael Lara says he loves the channel. 3,000. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think Tait does too. But yeah, dude. So moving on from the Mark 85, we had Captain America.
I got on mic the second, Ross, you said that. I walked back into my room. My mom beckoned me to help her set up. So my mom's setting up a baby shower right now. She beckoned me, and as soon as he says, "How about that Captain America?" I'm here, dude. I mean, come on. That's destiny.
Dude, hell yeah. Right on. So aside from Tait disappearing on me, dude, this Captain America, oh my god. I mean, the Mark 50 looks pretty different to the 85. But if you go back and you look at even my Infinity War cap or any Captain America that preceded it, I mean, they are just completely different figures. Because, the reason my old Captain America figures were so inaccurate is because I came up with the general look of the design, the dark blue primary color, the denim secondary color, the light denim secondary. And you'd have to go on my Flickr or go back on the channel to see the Age of Ultron or those older showcases. But the old Captain America figures had this English navy dark blue color as the primary, this really bright denim color as the secondary on the sides of the arms and the helmet. And I used a flash cowl because that's all we had at the time. We didn't have Lego's new helmet to use as a base. And I came up with this inaccurate, simplistic design that really was kind of a minimalized version of what you could actually achieve on a Lego minifigure. And I was okay with that in 2015, 16, and even a little bit in 18. But this year I was just like, no, I don't know why I was okay with that with Infinity War. I guess time constraints, but I knew that I was going to do better this time. That was the ultimate goal. I wasn't, and like a rule that I made for myself going into making Captain America, I was like, I am not going to look at any of those figures for inspiration at all. Whereas with Infinity War, when I made Cap, in his Nomad appearance, I had the Civil War cap on my desk and I was glancing at it for inspiration, which was a mistake. But for Endgame here, the number one thing that I was thinking about before I even got started was, okay, well, even though Lego came out with this new helmet finally for Endgame, it's really awkward looking on the back. It's too long and just too puffy looking. It was really bad. It was too thick. It covered up the face nicely, but it wasn't good. And so I was like, but at least let me give it a try. So I got an extra Cap helmet and I sanded the crap out of the back. But then when I was, because like what I'll do, guys, when I'm doing headgear pieces or helmets or anything that goes on a minifig head that's going to have a painted face, I'll do tests before I paint the face. So I'll put like, black splotches and like a little black squiggle and like little white splotches on like those, like for pupils to test to see if it'll be friendly to a painted face. Because painted faces can be ruined if you're not careful, because that's something I don't do on my figures. I don't seal my figures in areas where it doesn't need to be sealed, because if anything were to happen on my figures, I'm the guy who made them. I can fix whatever might happen. So I have to be wary though with painted faces, because especially for a helmet like this. And sure enough, I put Lego's Captain America helmet on and it tore right into the paint I had tested out on a minifig head. So what I wound up doing was I took my drill and I carved out the inside of Lego's helmet. And I kind of mentioned that in the showcase, but what I didn't really get to mention in the showcase is just how long I actually worked on the inside of that helmet. Because it's not the challenge when carving out the inside of a helmet is not carving out the inside of the helmet. The challenge is the mess of scraps and little shavings of plastic that are stuck to the insides of the eye sockets.
Ross the box of scraps.
Exactly.
No, guys, I can comment on this because Ross was sending me pictures and pictures and pictures of little blue shavings. I mean, They were everywhere.
It does get everywhere. I think the messiest I've ever gotten working on a figure, though, was when I had to shave the Hulk's hair off of that big fig for Thanos for Infinity War.
Oh, yeah.
That was when I first tried out a Dremel tool. Actually made the figure smoke.
Oh, jeez.
It was fun. I'm going to try to avoid that for Armored Thanos. But yeah, we're doing all right, Cedric. How are you? Yeah, so that once I finally did clean up that helmet, though, and I got the thick layers of paint on it to seal over the roughness, and I painted it, I had to come up with the base colors. And I wasn't going to do dark blue. Wasn't going to do anything stupid like that. That was inaccurate. I was going to mix. Make my own denim, make my own dark denim. Those are the primary colors that make up Captain America's costume in the MCU since Age of Ultron. But the problem is, even though my colors for this figure were accurate, they were a little thicker than I would have liked. Not thick enough to where it was going to create a big problem, but the colors that I used on Captain America were thick enough to where I always had to be mindful about how I was distributing the paint. Meaning, if I thought paint was going to clump up anywhere, I had to move it and redistribute it to make sure that it didn't happen and that it didn't dry that way. And so that was just an ongoing thing throughout the making of the entire figure. That was just for everything. And you have to be especially careful about stuff like that because, and this is something I've never really talked about before, my minifigures, as you handle them, like even if your hands are clean, the more you touch your figures after you've painted them and the more you leave them to sit, it's almost like the paint as it really like dries, like not just beyond the usual 10 or 15 minutes that it takes to dry, because technically the paint is still wet for a time after that. But as the days go on, as you handle the figure more, the color darkens and gets the sheen to it. This oily sheen. Again, whether your hands are clean or not when handling the figures. And so if I did that and I handled my cap more, and then I added more paint, that paint is noticeable. And so you almost have to over-handle that part of the figure to make sure it blends with the rest of the now shifting color tones. And that's something nobody talks about in the customizing community. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, man, I mean, maybe that's just something that happens to me, but it was challenging. And one thing that was, I mean, like, this is just the start of the helmet, guys. The rest of the helmet was tough. And what I wound up doing, because even though Hot Toys figures are helpful to an extent, what isn't helpful is when you really can't see around certain angles. So even though, like a wealth of photos doesn't necessarily equate to good reference. So what I would do is I would pull up reviews of like YouTubers' reviews of the Hot Toys Civil War cap. And then I would pause when they would show the helmet and just screenshot every angle I needed going all around. Because Cap has had the same helmet since Winter Soldier with 2014 and with the stealth suit. So any reference for his helmet from that suit onward is technically, you can consider accurate. And even after all of that, those YouTubers didn't show the top of the helmet. And I couldn't find reference of the top of Cap's helmet. So I was finally just like, I went on Instagram and I was like, hey guys, I've been working on Cap's helmet for a while. I think I watched the entirety of Jessica Jones season 3 and I didn't even finish Cap's helmet. I didn't even come close. And I watched the whole freaking season in the background. And thankfully, some guys on Instagram hooked me up with some really solid reference that helped out a lot. And I was able to complete that helmet. I forget their names, but they were super helpful. But yeah, like Super Chris Productions saying, like, like you notice on this sheen to it after a while. And when you add paint on top of it, it makes it look like two different colors. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That is something that does happen. And you have to be wary of that if you add more paint to your figure after a while. And so that's always a problem with my process, Super Chris, is because I don't work on parts of the figure all at the same time. Like, I don't just like work on the helmet start to finish, work on the arm start to finish. A lot of times I'll bounce around. And so that sheen will be created. And by the time I'm ready to go back and finish that part of the figure, I have to be wary of that sheen that's created that kind of makes the colors look, different than they were originally. But yeah, so one thing that I also did on this Captain America that I think was just so obvious to me was the letter A on the front of the helmet. As simple as this is.
This is good.
I mean, you look at Cap's helmet in the MCU, that letter A is not like ingrained. It's not like printed on. So I'm just thinking to my past self, like, hey, past Ross, idiot, why didn't you ever just print out a letter A and stick it on there? That's exactly what I did. I just literally went on Google, got letter A, made sure it looked like Chris Evans' Captain America's helmet's A, and then I just stuck it on there and with glue, obviously, and it was good. And I painted that whole thing up. I didn't even get to talk about that in the showcase, but it was pretty funny. Now, one thing too about this, again, just the head. My old Captain America figures looked good, but they never really did capture Chris Evans' likeness under that helmet. And we don't have a picture of this, but you can find it on the showcase or on Phoenix Customs website or his Instagram. He released his first Avenger Captain America from the World War II variant when Steve goes into the Hydra base and rescues Bucky and all the guys from that entire sequence. And it was the perfect damn Chris Evans head. And you can actually see it in this main photo. It's right there in between the figure and the regular shield. It is the perfect Chris Evans likeness. There have been some people who have come kind of close to Chris Evans' likeness, but neither I or anyone in this community before Phoenix was able to nail Chris Evans' likeness on a minifigure. There was just always something so challenging about it for me. But he did it, And best of all, Phoenix makes arguably the highest quality custom figures in this community. As a third-party vendor who prints and makes his own pieces, they are as close to Lego quality as any figure I've ever seen in this community. And I've been doing this since I was a kid, when I was 9 years old. So I've seen a lot. So it was pad printed. So that Chris Evans face is pad printed almost exactly like an official Lego minifig. So once that was done, once I had seen that photo of his Chris Evans likeness, I was like, okay, well, that figure's not coming out for a while. So I'll be able to use that cap Chris Evans face as an unmasked head. But the problem was still going to be how it was going to look under the helmet. Because Lego didn't really concern themselves too much with this. And so it certainly happened on their figure. And you can actually see that in today's video. I've got the first episode going up today, actually. Literally in like an hour and 20 minutes, I'm going to have a new video go up on the channel that compares these two figures to Legos. Lego just kind of kept the face looking normal underneath their new head. And so the mouth is a little too high. Now, what's cool about Flash cowls and Captain America helmets, like the new one Lego made, once you put that helmet on and you have the helmet separating the eyes and the mouth, it's like an optical illusion. You can't look at the head and really tell that something looks unnatural until you picture it without. Or in my case, in the showcase, until I literally pull it off to reveal that the face that I had painted underneath, inspired by Phoenix's cap, had the mouth painted intentionally lower so that it would look better with the helmet on. And that was okay with me because, again, I was going to get Phoenix's pad printed Chris Evans head. It was never meant to be the unmasked head because I was also gluing the chin strap on. And so once I had painted the face underneath, and by the way, the mouth was such a pain. Oh my God. Tait, getting the curvature of that mouth painted on was so aggravating. I was staring at Phoenix's design, but I just could not paint it. It took me hours.
Yeah, no, that does not look easy, dude.
Yeah, that was a pain. And
Play-Doh Thanos merch. Oh my God, do you see that comment? I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry. I just coughed and I just took a sip of my cold coffee.
Play-Doh Thanos is coming soon. He is in my oven. He's been baking for the past 2 weeks. We're gonna make merchandise. It's gonna be Play-Doh Thanos on a t-shirt. It's gonna cost $468 a shirt.
Tait, that's what we're gonna do when we meet up in real life next year. We are going to do an Avengers Endgame showcase. It is going to be amazing. We are going to just buy out Walmart's Play-Doh section and just be like, "Yo,
a life size." Wait,
and then we'll get demonetized because that'll be geared toward kids.
Oh
Whoops.
My God, we'll talk about that in a little while.
Later. Yeah, basically the apocalypse could be coming for me and other toys. So then came the chin strap, and the chin strap on Captain America. I literally, I think Tait and I were playing Battlefront 2, and then we got off for a couple hours, and I just came back with the chin strap done. And Tait, I remember you were like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, I was like, "Wow!" I was like, "This is so small. How do you even go about doing that?"
How did I just make that in between calls?
The most impressive thing that Ross has done in a short period of time is that chin strap. If you look at it, I mean, for a long while, wasn't that just gravity held into place, just pinched between the head and the body, Ross? When you first had made it, because that was the craziest thing. It's it's perfectly perfectly centered, and that was the thing that got to me. I was like, how the heck? I mean, this is tiny.
Yeah. I think I used a little bit of sticky tack to hold it in place to make sure I had the position perfect. And another thing that I had to be wary of with the chin strap was making sure that it connected to that helmet. Even though it wasn't literally connected, it had to go right up to the edges of that helmet. Because that's something that's happened to me a lot when doing chin straps. I think I might have made a 3D chin strap for another figure or something at some point. And it just, that's a challenge. Even with doing 3D elements is when the piece that you're adding doesn't go as far as you need it to, and then you have a little gap that gets under your skin forever. So I avoided all of that. I cut out this chin strap precisely so that it would accommodate Lego's new helmet. And I cut this from a Cape Madness cape. And then I glued it in place. And I think what I actually wound up doing was painting the inside of it first, so the part that faces the head. So I think I did that, and then I glued it in place. But the point is, I then realized, looking at reference, oh crap, there's a little piece that is tucked in behind this main strap on the actual helmet in the movies. So I was like, oh no! Thankfully, the chin strap, so that it looks natural, is not glued on the front. It's only glued on the sides. So the chin strap moves on the front, like as it actually would in the movies and as it does. It's not like stuck to his face, which I thought was a really good choice on my part and really wound up benefiting me very early on, because I then cut another small piece of fabric that was that shape and then tucked it behind the chin strap. I couldn't talk about any of this in the showcase, by the way. There just wasn't time. I tucked it behind the chin strap and then I glued it in there. And that was, again, and that the chin strap was already glued in place on the painted head. So I couldn't touch the painted head with the glue. And I was kind of terrified, but I did it. And I was like, thank you, God. But yeah,
no,
Phoenix.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a certified MGF moment.
Yeah, Phoenix is Chris Evans' face, so I'm so glad he had released the photos of that, and I was able to take inspiration from it. It's such a good design. And Tim Sargent's asking, Lab 9 or Phoenix Customs? I mean, I like Lab 9's work a lot too, but I mean, there is no denying, I really do believe Phoenix Customs produces the highest quality printed minifigures that you can buy on the market right now. And that even includes Christo on eBay, the famous Christo from South Africa, because that guy ships figures really late, doesn't make them as efficiently as he used to, and it's just really hard to kind of communicate with from sometimes, from what I understand. And Phoenix is none of those things. So Phoenix just really is like that guy, Adam, man, he is really the full package with the work he does and how efficiently he produces those figures. Because every time without fail, he releases a render and those figures are out in 3 to 4 months, you know, not even sometimes, often not even that long. It's incredible. And yeah, so then that's just the head. That is just the head, Tate. Moving on though, like once I had gotten the actual Chris Evans face with all of its pad printed glory in from Phoenix on that figure, I grabbed the same hairpiece I'd used for Infinity War cap. I cut the little piece of hair that dangles down. I cut that off, sanded it, smoothed it over, painted over it, and dry brushed the entire hairpiece after I painted it in a base color of tan, and made the perfect looking endgame Captain America head, which unmasked Captain America head to go with it, which was really cool for the video. I would have loved an hour-long endgame showcase. Thank you, Tim Sargent. Unfortunately, the YouTube algorithm and most people wouldn't. So it wound up being 30 minutes, which was actually, believe it or not, as short as I could make it, which was pretty sad almost. But I really still am proud of the video, regardless of how long it is. So then came the torso. Now, the torso is completely painted in that denim color that I mixed, the primary denim color. The problem with painting an entire torso in a color is sealing the sides of the torso to be safe for when you put the arms on. So whenever you paint on the sides of the torso, there has to be some level of sealant on the sides, or else, and I don't know how other customizers do it, some of them don't even use sealant and it doesn't happen to them, that paint's going to tear. Easy. Instantly. So the sides of Cap's torso are sealed over a bit. And before I could even apply that denim color, I had to do the 3D elements. And originally I was like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. Lego designs a really good Captain America torso, an accurate Captain America torso. And that's what they did for Infinity War. Obviously, it didn't have the scales or anything, but that's not the point. The point is those shapes were accurate. So here's what I was going to do. I was going to take Lego's design and then extend it a little bit in Microsoft Word so I could cut off the belt and just get the torso. And then cut those shapes out and glue them on. And oh my God. That sucked. The front of the torso sucked. I mean, the front of the torso is not perfect, but it's about as close as I could get to perfect. And as far as the abdomen goes, those white sections, I just had to abandon all hope of being completely accurate. And I had to cut those shapes and like basically I think what I wound up doing was either painting or like designing those shapes in Photoshop. And I forget what I did, but I either printed the shapes out and then cut them with a razor, or then like I either did that or I painted them first. I think I printed them and then I cut them. The point is, the cutting process was so tedious because what happens is you think you can be really precise with it, and usually you can. But sometimes little bits of the paper will come out of the corners when you do those cuts. And so you wind up spending 5 to 10 minutes trying to clean that corner up and get rid of those little fibers. And that, all of that handling and all that use makes the 3D elements and the thick paper almost more flimsy. I think the front torso 3D elements fell apart at least once. I want to say. Maybe they didn't. I might have been able to prevent it. But it was not a clean process. I managed to clean it up with paintwork, but it was tough, those 3D elements. And then, when did I start to work on these again? Golden Light, and again, like I said, toward the beginning of this show, I was working on them very on and off this time. I mean, every 3 days to a week. That's why it took this long. I'm going to try to pick up the pace moving forward now because I've got a lot more momentum now. But the point is, moving like after that, though, moving on from just those baseline 3D elements, once I got the base color painted on, it was time for the scales. And the scales were something I was thinking about at first. Like going into making Captain America, the first two things I was thinking of, how was I going to do the helmet? How was I going to do the scales? Right? And at first, I mean, of course, like other customizers, I certainly considered getting a thin layer of Procreate on those areas, engraving the scales in with a knife, with an X-Acto blade, whatever you use. But then I was looking at them and I'm like, there are other layers that have to go on top of the scales. And any sculpting work is going to make this too thick. Because that's another thing about Captain America and Iron Man. I did not want to make them more bulky than they should be. That's a big thing with me. I do not like disproportionate shoulders or disproportionate wrist armor. And a big part of why there was no wrist armor on the Mark 85, which you saw previously, was because it wouldn't have really worked well with the glove tops or the painted hands. So that's why there was no wrist armor on the Mark 85. And it really didn't need it, to be honest. But the same thing pretty much went for Cap, right? As far as making sure that there wouldn't be any disproportionately thick areas on the figure. So I was like, you know what? Those scales don't stick out enough on the suit. I'm painting them. And again, not only did I always have to be cautious and considerate about where the scales were going in terms of direction, but like I said earlier, the paint was thick. The denim paint was really thick. That's being, I overemphasize that. It wasn't that thick. But the denim paint I was using that I'd mixed was thick enough to where I had to be very careful as I was doing these scales. And so, I went up and down first, and then I went side to side after. And I didn't get to talk about this in the showcase, but those scales all look as good as they do, partially because I maintained a staircase pattern with each one. And now the challenging part of this is like, you're trying to avoid making the paint too thick, and you're trying to avoid making the lines too thick or too messy. Meaning the lines of each of the scales could not be wider than the others. They had to be mostly consistent. And you look at Cap's scales in the movie, and they're not all like lined up perfectly, right? Like he has rows of scales that are all slight, like they kind of go up the scales in like a staircase fashion. And so I had to replicate that on my figure. But I had to paint over the 3D shoulders that I had done on the arms and the torso and everything. and just kind of paint as many scales as I could over those areas to ensure that when I painted the edges, like the mountain blue edges that you can kind of see in the center and you can certainly see in the showcase, when I painted all the remaining detail on top of the torso, on top of the shoulders on the sides, including those mountain blue rims on the shoulders, including the Avengers A symbols that would have to go on top of the scales on the arms, I had to make sure that the scales wouldn't cut off anywhere. There had to be enough scales painted everywhere to make sure that it would look as natural as possible. So there were a lot of scales that got covered up. So like on the top of the torso, where the straps go over the sides, the edges of the 3D elements in the abdomen, on the front of the torso, around the star, around the sides of the shoulders, there were some scales that got covered up that I had painted. So I had actually painted more scales than I needed to just to make sure it was safe and that it would look natural. And this is great, man. I don't get to talk about this stuff in the showcases. Sorry, Tate. I know this is really bad, a one-sided podcast.
Dude, no, it's 100% fine. We're finally talking Legos, so we're all good.
Yeah,
dude.
I guess that is a plus. Oh shit. But yeah, and so once I did all that, once I got the scales on though, I was able to paint all the remaining detail. I was able to get the star glued in. The star was already glued in. I just forgot to talk about it. The star is a separate piece as well, that I pulled from Google, I think, just like the letter A for the helmet. And I painted all the detail, and the straps came later. They came toward the end. But the challenging thing about the straps is those straps start on the sides of the torso there. They go up and over the top, but they cut off at the back. So if we take a look at the back of Captain America and that picture, and you can certainly see it in the showcase too. I've got the photo up on Flickr and Instagram. I'm not sure if Tate has the picture or not. Those straps actually cut off, like I said. So I had to then, when I got to the back of the torso, kind of glue the straps, the additional straps that would go on the back, as close to the straps on the front and top of the torso as possible. Then use a bit of thick paint to really smooth over that transition. So if you look at that picture, you can barely tell that the straps on the upper back of the torso are separate pieces, which I was really proud of because I achieved a similar transition. I love just watching Tate like fiddle with the picture, trying to get it centered.
Hey, man, I'm doing my best.
No, dude, I appreciate it. It looks like a pain in the ass. Yeah, no, it was good though. I mean, in the transition. What are the straps made of? They're usually it's all this. Whenever I say 3D elements, I'm usually referring to like cardstock. It's always just like cardstock that I use. And yeah, man. And I also had to wrangle with the buckles on the back of the torso because originally I was going to make the buckles 3D elements as well, even on top of the other 3D elements that I already applied to the back, which you can see multi-layered toward the lower half of the torso. You can definitely see them sticking out a little bit. I was going to make those buckles 3D, but I was like, you know what? This is not going to work. These are going to be even messier than the front of the torso. Like these 3D elements are going to be way too tedious and they're going to stick out too much. And they don't need to stick out. They don't stick out that much in the movie. So I just settled on painting them because I knew they would look better painted. So I did that. And I think the back of the torso and the back of the legs was the last part that I actually worked on. But one of the challenges when doing the belt, and you can kind of see this on the back here, because it's pretty much the same on the front, going around the whole figure, were those lines going around it. So like once I had the rubber pouches that I carved out, glued onto the front and back of the belt, I had to go all the way around the belt with those brown lines. And let me tell you, dude, the alignment was a pain in the ass. And the alignment is not perfect on those sets of round lines that run around the belt. But thankfully, the pouches kind of create interference going around the belt. So the alignment isn't that big of an issue. Plus, the arms cover up the sides of the belt anyway. So it's really only a thing that I knew about until. But Ross, would you consider making a video featuring the skits that didn't make it into the Cap and Iron Man video? Tim Sargent, there were no skits that didn't make it into the Cap and Iron Man video. I had 6 skits in that video, dude, and I pretty much did all of the ones I wanted to. Any future skits pertaining to Tony or Cap will be for future showcases. Like the ones with Tony will be with like the rescue showcase with that video. But yeah, and the arms, like I told you guys, once I had made the and this is actually something that was cool with the arms. Before I'd started painting the arms, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier on here and also in the showcase. The shoulders I designed in Photoshop, printed them out to put on there. And originally, I was going to do separate 3D elements for the shoulder and the red strip thing that goes underneath those shoulders. But I was like, you know what? With paint, I can make these two look like separate pieces, and it'll look just as good. And so that's what I did. And it does look just as good. And so I'm pretty happy with that, because that whole piece with the shoulder and the red strap thing on the bottom as part of it, I had to paint those scales on and then really be precise about making that shoulder look like its own standalone piece from the red design. Oh yeah, Tim Sargent, the scene that you thought didn't make it in, I posted some pictures, Tate, over on Instagram of like some stills from the intros, some edits that I made for those intros that I didn't wind up using.
Right, right.
Yeah, you were actually there when I cut one of those pictures with Cap.
I heavily critiqued them.
Yeah, because originally the intro for the Captain America started out with Captain America waking up and saying, Nick Fury saying, "Are you going to be okay?" And then I had a date. And then it was going to cut into the intro that you see in the video now, but it added 10 seconds. It was cool, but it really didn't need to be there.
Yeah, and also starting with that ship crash really gets the mood started. You know what I mean? It really starts it up. It gets you going.
I was happy with that, man. I was so happy going back and watching. Oh my God, look at how many times they cut away to just the window and I can just composite in a Lego chair. It was great. But yeah, and so another thing too about the arms going down them, I was like, oh man. The arms on Captain America, if you really pay attention to them in the movie and looking at reference, they are more complicated than you'd think. And so I really tried to make the design as accurate as I could. And so the arms are significantly more detailed going down past the shoulders even than any other Captain America I've ever made. And that includes the shoulders too. Because even though the shoulders are super detailed, like one thing that I had to make sure I did once all this detail was on was seal over those shoulders. Because Tate, let me tell you, I was able to mention this in the showcase. When you paint all those scales and then a multi-layered Avengers A symbol on top of those scales, you try to jam that arm into a socket, onto a minifigure torso socket, you smush the crap out of what you just painted. And I learned this the hard way when I first did the Avengers A symbols, or I think I might have made the mistake with Civil War. I forget which. It was Age of Ultron back in 2015 when I first ever painted the Avengers A symbols. And I didn't do the sealant, and then they just squished, and I was like, my babies! Because let me tell you, kids, when you are progressing in your skills as a minifigure painter and you just paint your first Avengers A symbols perfectly on shoulders for the first time, and then you try to jam them into a minifigure torsos, and then you squish them, oh my God, I was sad. That was a long time ago. But yeah, I never made that mistake again. Point is, the arms were tedious, and even going past just the arms themselves, I did paint up a pair of tiny tactical glove tops in 2 different brown colors, and those connect to the hands, which have their own bit of detail. Now, Tate, I've talked to you about this, and you can see them in this picture on the back. The detail on the hands, and this goes for every figure that I make. I have a rule with minifigure hands. I do not paint around them and other customizers do not have this rule. I mean, I see plenty of customizers painting around hands all the time, like it's no big deal. For me, it always is a big deal. I don't know what those customizers do, but no matter what I have done in my experience over the years, you paint around a minifigure hand, and that paint is tearing or chipping off at some point. May not be the first week, the first month, the first year. It's coming off. It's just a matter of when. I want my figures to stand the test of time. So I only paint on the sides. And for figures like Ant-Man, who have like the buttons on their hands that you want to paint on, or like the Mark 85 with the time stone, I'll paint on the tops of the hands, the tops of the claws. But that's it. And so you'll see that echoed here with Captain America, because you'll notice that I never paint the fingers, the exposed fingers from his gloves. And that's fine by me. I think it still looks great, regardless of having those fingers. The back of that shield was awesome. Oh yeah, and thank you, actually. So I guess now that we've talked about the back a little bit, we'll cut back to the back in a second. But Tate, if you can bring up the front main picture again. Essentially, with this Captain America, of course, came the two shields. Because we knew Cap had his broken shield. Thanos, with his giant Uru metal double-bladed sword, finally is the one to break Cap's vibranium shield. And that was obviously going to be the main shield that my figure was. But I wanted to also have a normal shield for him. You know, this is going to be my last main Captain. So I started with the broken shield. And I actually used Lego's new shields for this, because there's a benefit to using Lego's new endgame shields for the custom ones. And in this particular case, it was when you use Lego's new endgame Captain America shield, you get the gray handle molded on the back, which is important because that's better than dark red. You don't want the dark red handle. And again, I don't paint on the minifigure handles, so having the gray was pretty much the only option. And by having Lego's print on there, you get the best of both worlds, right? You get the gray handle, and you get the design already painted on there for you to then just go over yourself. Because I don't know if you ever tried it. You ever try to paint a perfect star, then surrounded by perfect circles?
Yeah, Ross, every Tuesday and Thursday of each month.
It's not easy, dude. I certainly knew that it was not going to look right. And so I didn't even bother. And even if Lego hadn't made their endgame shield, I would have gladly have used a dark red shield anyway if I had to. But having the dark gray piece this time with Lego's print on the front was a tremendous help. And so what I did was I painted over the star. What did I do first? I'm trying to remember what order I painted the red. I think I did the silver first. Yeah, I think I definitely did the silver first. I painted the star first. I went over the star with my own silver, and then I also did the main silver around in the middle of the shield. And then I painted the dark red elements, the dark red element, or not the dark red, but the regular red element going around the shield. And then this whole thing was experimental, because one thing I had never done in the past was make a proper Captain America shield. This went for Civil War and every other Captain America before it. I had always just taken Lego's dark red shield and just added some metallic blue to the center and just repainted the white with silver. That was all I used to do. This time, I wanted to make a proper Captain America shield with the proper color scheme, but it also needed to have the right shine. It needed to look like the shining Star-Spangled Man's shield. It needed to look like the vibranium Captain America shield. So the idea was, okay, I'm going to paint this whole thing. I'm going to paint the star's detail in the center, and then I'm going to lather it up with sealant and see how it looks. Dude, it wound up looking perfect. Because, like, the biggest thing about going into making these shields was, like, I had seen so many other people in the community using chrome paints and Model Masters this and Model Masters that, and those paints are toxic. This crap takes so long to do. You're painting for so long. I don't want to willingly use anything toxic for more than a couple minutes. Tate, the most toxic thing I use is like my sealant and maybe the black spray primer for when I'm painting sculpts by people. So like when I did the Mark 1 last year, or the Arbiter from Halo 5, like sculpts like that are hit with spray primer first. That's the only time I really use toxic stuff, those two instances. Can you ask AV to make figures of Mjolnir or casts of Mjolnir? He told me that he might. He told me that he might do that. We'll see. I mean, he was going to make casts for like the Mark 50 accessories last year too, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So we'll see. But he has the cast. I mean, he certainly could. Yeah, good question, Spooderpool. So yeah, once all of that was done and I got the first broken shield paint job on there, of course I did the weathering, which was a big thing too. I had to be very careful about how the weather it to be realistic, but also not too much before I put the sealant on. Because once you put sealant on something, it's final, right? Once the sealant's on, you're not redoing anything. It's sealed on. And so that's something I always really consider before I do that. And I was just so happy, Tate. Like when I first got the sealant on the broken shield and it looked exactly how I was hoping, I was like, thank you, God. And then I didn't paint the detail on the backs of the shields until way later, but essentially toward the end of making Cap, I did make the normal shield. It was the same process, except I didn't use a pair of clippers. And actually, before I stopped talking about the broken shield, I totally forgot the biggest thing. All of those cuts with actually making the cracks and the breaks are accurate. As accurate as I could make them, which I'm proud of. Unfortunately, I broke a really nice pair of clippers when creating that cracked shield, but it was worth it, dude. Look at that thing. I'm really happy with it. Which War Machine armor am I making? So, PJ, I am making 2. I already kind of have an idea of how I'm going about it, but that's not going to be happening for a little while because I'm doing Black Widow, Ronin, Thor, and Hulk first. But eventually, when it came time to paint detail on the backs of the shield, I hadn't actually done any for the broken shield yet. The back of the broken shield was just black for a while. But I painted the front of the normal shield, same process, just obviously no cracks. I wasn't breaking the whole thing intentionally or adding any battle damage. But I did have to paint the back of the detail. And so if we take a look at the picture of the back of the figure one more time here, to see that detail, it's essentially as accurate as I could make it with those straps and all those little dots and all those details and the buckles. And again, you can see all of this in the showcase or on my Flickr or Instagram. I've got full pictures of just about everything already up and available. It was slow, it was tedious and time consuming to get all that silver on there accurately. And that went for both the normal shield and then replicating it again. But obviously only a fraction of it for the broken shield, because it's obviously half the shield. But yeah, so finally, the last accessory for Captain America was Mjolnir. Now, did you consider using the Ezra Miller flash cowl for Cap's helmet? No, that was never an option. Supersonic, that was not really an idea that ever crossed my mind. That just wouldn't work. Essentially, what I did for Mjolnir was I took an old Mjolnir hammer that I had from a previous third-party vendor who had made casts at one point, and I took the same one that I gave Age of Ultron Thor in like 2015. The problem with that Mjolnir is it wasn't painted by me. It was painted by that third-party vendor from 2015, and they had painted their own cast in gray. Now, I'll tell you, this is something I always talk about. You paint anything onto a minifigure handle that is to be gripped by minifigure claws. I don't care what you do to that handle. I don't care what paint you use. I don't care what sealant you use. That paint's coming off. It's chipping off at some point. So I had another cast of Mjolnir, but it was gray. So I messaged my buddy Andrew after Celebration sometime, and I was like, do you think you can take this cast and make it in brown? Can you cast Mjolnir in brown? So the handle will be brown. And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay, great. I didn't know brown resin was really a thing. or that he even had brown resin, but he did. Or at least he was able to make it. I don't know. I didn't actually ask. But eventually I sent him Mjolnir, and he did finally, because that problem of worrying about the brown handle and any paint being a problem was completely eliminated from the process. And even so, even having the handle now in brown, you still had the rivets in the handle where I could have filled those in with silver, but I didn't want to risk it. Because even though those silver parts could be inside the handle technically with those rivets that you see part of the piece, I didn't want to risk anything coming off the handle. But yeah, this is all stuff that I just really couldn't talk about in the showcase, man. I mean, there's just no time. You guys see, I could do stuff for a long time. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Are you going to make stop motion parts from the movie? No, I'm not a stop motion animator, and honestly, I don't think my figures would work too well for stop motion if I wasn't there to help with any problems the figures may experience. Because these figures are not perfect. Like my figures, that's something I always, sometimes mention. They're not perfect. You handle my figures enough the wrong way, they will get damaged. These are not pad printed Lego figures. That goes for every customizer too, by the way. That goes for anyone making painted figures. It's not great for stop motion. So yeah, the brown handle helped a lot. I got the base color itself, like the top half of Mjolnir. Got the whole thing painted in the base colors of silver. But even once all that was done, I got the base colors of silver on. Of course, I had to paint the inscriptions. And originally, for the first preview I did with Cap and Iron Man together, the inscriptions on yet, so I actually edited that in. You can see that on my Instagram or anywhere. Those inscriptions, I somehow managed to paint the majority of them through like one sitting of rewatching The Dark Knight on Netflix recently, like 2 weeks ago, not even. And I didn't think those were going to turn out as good as they did. Because small detail like that, especially on 8 different sides of the hammer, should not have turned out as good as it actually did. And obviously the inscriptions aren't totally accurate. The idea was to capture the look of the inscriptions, not actually the inscriptions themselves, because you literally cannot replicate those onto a minifigure version of Mjolnir. And if you did, it would just look way too small. And thankfully, once I got all of it on there and sealed over, my thumb, not thankfully that my thumb was hurting, but thankfully it worked out. But what sucked was after, that night, man, my thumb was a little sore. Painting those inscriptions on, my thumb definitely was not feeling too hot for that night. But yeah, you should name this custom cap Worthy Captain America after the Marvel Legends figure, Ross. I mean, to me, it's just kind of Captain America, Ian, but that is a cool figure that not a lot of people could get because they made that like a Walmart exclusive for like a week. But it is a cool name, Worthy Captain America. That was cool for that Marvel Legends figure. But other than that, the legs on Captain America were tough. It was tough painting the foot detail. It was tough painting the straps going around all 4 sides of the legs and making sure the alignment was correct the whole time. But what was the most challenging about painting the legs on Captain America was by far the buckles. Those buckles were all individually cut and glued on by me. And now here's the challenge when gluing little things on like that. You put a little bit of glue on anything and you glue it in place. A little bit of that glue seeps out from underneath. So even after I went through the painstaking process of actually getting those buckles glued in place, I had to deal with the fallout of that and paint over any affected areas that got glue on them. And then I was able to paint the detail onto those buckles. And those are the smallest buckles I have ever made. So it was nuts. Making these figures was nuts. But again, considering this was the last time that I get to make new suits for Captain America and Iron Man in the MCU, I damn well made sure that I made mini Hot Toys figures. And that is the whole idea for the Endgame showcases, to make these figures as good as I can make them. Does that mean every Endgame figure is going to be absolutely perfect? No. None of my figures are perfect, and oftentimes I make controversial decisions on my figures. Usually not everybody agrees with. My figures get criticized a lot. These didn't, somehow. But, yeah. Tait, that's it, man. That is it for those two figures. I literally just talked about those for about an hour and 10 minutes. And guys, that is how long my showcases could actually be if I talk about the full process like I just did. Because that process took place over the course of 4 months, on and off, every 3 days to a week between sessions. And again, I'm speeding it up for the future. But that is what you just experienced with this podcast and hanging out with me as I've been rambling, is how long a showcase could actually go if I really went into it like I just did. And that's why I think this is a really good place for the podcast. And maybe going forward, I mean, I don't know. I feel bad because Tait really hasn't been talking much at all. And he's just been kind of my hostage for 10 minutes.
Hey, man, I'm not complaining.
I feel terrible.
No, dude, don't. I'm not complaining at all.
But dude, thank you for sitting here for the last hour and 15 minutes, Tait, and changing the slides out for me. I really appreciate it, dude.
Of course. That's what friends are for. But Ross, we have to talk about the other topics in like 10 minutes because baby shower has begun. Early.
Okay. Yes, got it. Okay. So we're not going to talk about the Joker too much. So Star Destroyer, Tait. The UCS Star Destroyer Devastator was revealed by Lego.
Dumb and stupid. That's my contribution.
Dumb and stupid. I'm usually not a stickler for the ratio of price per piece either, but the fact stands that Lego just released, and is releasing anyway, on the 18th, the new UCS Star Destroyer after all the rumors and all these years. And it's 14 to 15 cents per piece. It's got only 2 minifigures, and it's got no interior at all whatsoever, and it's a whopping $700.
Remember that Super Star Destroyer that was the same price, or the same amount of pieces, but it was like $600 and it included an interior and like 6 figures? That was awesome.
I don't know if it was the same pieces, but it was, yeah. I mean, it wasn't exact,
awesome.
But
it was awesome.
It was good. And, Tait, this one hurt. Because I would have been open to getting the Star Destroyer if it was like if it was like $500 or $600 after getting the Falcon. So, like, in a year or so when I get the Falcon, I would have definitely been open to a year or so after that getting the Star Destroyer. But it's just a ripoff. And I think it's a great model. Like, as a Star Destroyer display piece, you could not ask for a better model. I mean, it's phenomenal looking. It is an incredible display piece. But you know what comes with those incredible display pieces to like make sense of a price point like $700? A full set of minifigures, like the Falcon, and just some interior. Not a big interior.
The Falcon doesn't have that much interior. It has the cockpit. It has...
There's like a few back rooms.
Something.
It doesn't need to be anything major, but I don't care how many big pieces there are. I don't care how many panels there are on the exterior. I don't care how crazy the Technic frame is. This set should not be this much money. If anything, those pieces could have raised the price maybe $50. But listen, man. The cost of manufacturing bigger pieces and their licensing issues with Disney should not fall on the consumer.
Ross, can I yell for a second?
Yeah.
All right. Disney, I want you to take a seat right here on Santa's lap. I want to explain something to you tenderly. You have the Star Wars license, right? You've had it since '99. The Star Wars license has been in good terms with Lego. They make, new pieces. The license hasn't gone up in price because they've had it for so long. I mean, it's not a problem. But, the Marvel stuff, then that starts seeping into the Star Wars stuff. You know what I mean by that? Marvel costs more for Lego than Star Wars does because they've had the Star Wars license for so long. Marvel makes they make a lot of decisions with Marvel of overpricing sets and all that kind of stuff because of the license. Now they're putting that into Star Wars. They know apologists are gonna buy this $700 set.
Mm-hmm. And when we say apologists, we just mean like the hardcore
people that think Lego can do no wrong. There's hardcore Lego fans, and then there's people that think they can do no wrong.
Yeah, and listen, man. Again, it's a great looking model. I cannot praise it enough. It's incredible. I mean, if you look at that thing in the designer video, this Star Destroyer is phenomenal.
I mean, it's okay. It's like, not mock quality.
It's what?
I'm just kidding.
Well, dude, they have to make it.
Ross, I'm teasing.
They have to make it marketable.
Dude, I'm trying to pinch your jellies right now.
Tait is like, why didn't they just steal the one from Brick Fair and release that as a product?
Oh, dude, that Brick Fair one with the interior, that one was sick.
Dude, it was incredible in person. Oh my god.
I'd never seen it in person. Geez. Oh,
Dude,
I was at Miniland, and they had the big Kylo Ren First Order one, and I took a picture with it. We snuck into Disneyland, or not Disneyland, Legoland. Here's a story time. You guys want to hear about that time I snuck into Legoland? So there was...
Wasn't this like 2 days ago?
Yeah. So there was an event for employees, right? And my buddies who are employees, they invited me to come with them. So I did. And then you're not supposed to leave Miniland, right? And that includes not going to Star Wars Miniland. But we just walked around the park. So we technically snuck into Legoland. Technically. Cool story. Anyway, I can't pull up the Joaquin Phoenix Joker picture because my streaming software just said, screw you, idiot. And I don't know.
Oh, no. Well, hopefully the stream doesn't get cut off abruptly.
Joker movie is cool and awesome, but people are complaining that it's an incel film because it has feelings and drama in it.
Yeah, this is well, I mean, let's be clear here. It's a loud minority.
It's a loud minority, exactly. I mean, but then you have this is almost better though than the pretentious guy saying there was an 8-minute standing ovation.
Listen, man, I have respect for the film industry and all those people in LA who really enjoy kind of tooting their own horn. But listen, that's BS. Nobody stands in place for 8 minutes.
Well, I do, Ross.
Clapping.
Idiot. I did that.
Tait, you're going to a baby shower, Tait. You better stand in place for 8 freaking minutes and then send it over. Post it on the channel. Tait clapping for 8 minutes.
I'm gonna T-post for 8 minutes, Ross. It's gonna be so powerful and strong.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in such a weird mood, dude. I only got 30 minutes of sleep last night. I just want to throw memes up on screen right now, but I'm refraining. But no, guys, the Joker movie is going to be cool and good, and we'll have coverage on it in October, on October 4th. By that time, Ross, let's change the name of the podcast so we can just make a video the day of.
Dude, we know the guys, if you want to submit your ideas for what we're going to name the podcast, because we're 25 episodes in almost, and we haven't named it. Listen,
that's fine.
We never put a freaking deadline as to when we would have a name for the show. I mean, we just wanted to kind of happen naturally and organically.
We should call it the Cool and Good Podcast because it's cool and good.
Cool and Good Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Cool and Good Podcast.
I'm pregnant. This podcast. It's my baby shower today.
Well, that took a turn. So yeah, Joker is apparently a just absolutely divine piece of film, and Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix have apparently actually truly crafted the masterpiece that we were all hoping they did, and the masterpiece, high budget indie style film that Joaquin Phoenix wanted to do, separate from any franchise, which is very exciting. I mean, this is going to be an incredible film from what we understand, but going into this film, watching Joaquin Phoenix finally get the chance to do the Joker movie he wanted to do, people are going to have to let go of the comics.
Oh, 100%.
Anything you saw in the comics, you're going to have to let go going into this movie.
This is not Joker. This is a guy. This is not the Joker we know.
That's it. And Tait, it's been pissing me off because Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne are in it, because it's in Gotham, people are still using a heavy emphasis on calling this movie a comic book movie.
It's not. It's a drama. It
Like
is a
people
political
people
drama.
open their conversations with it's changing the game for comic book movies, but it's not. Don't even start by calling it that or even really making that a part of the conversation because it's just so independent of the source material, which I think is very exciting. Of course, it does have nods to the source material. Yes, it's in Gotham. Yes, it is the Joker. Yes, you do have Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne in the 80s. But none of that is important. This is the high budget, independent style, well written, godly freaking Joker movie that Joaquin Phoenix wanted to make. And Tate, I don't believe there's anyone alive right now who's going to be able to play who's going to be able to play the Joker better than Joaquin Phoenix.
Nobody can play Joaquin Phoenix better than Joaquin Phoenix. Come on, that's technically factual. No, here's the thing. I've said this in days where I'm not delirious and tired and dumb. But Joaquin Phoenix plays a destroyed persona so well. If he brings his performances in this movie, those destroyed psyche characters where he is unhinged, maniacal, frankly scary and imposing, this is going to be incredible. I mean, I 100% believe that there is no person who walks on Earth, who has ever walked on Earth, that can deliver the same performance as Joaquin Phoenix is going to. This is going to be such a unique and beautiful performance that we are going to see, and I am so excited for it. I use Streamlabs OBS on Windows. It's super cool and good. Spooter, please stop spamming chat, dude. Please.
But yeah, dude, we talked about this in the podcast. There are certain actors today who just are the only actors for certain roles. Robert Downey Jr. is the only man walking the earth who can play Iron Man in our lifetime, and he did it. I mean, the same can be said for Chris Evans as Steve Rogers. I mean, the same. I think you'll be able to say the same thing for Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. I truly do not believe anyone is going to be able to top that when it happens in October. And I don't know about you, Tate, but I've been checking Fandango a lot. I'm waiting for that. I want to be there opening night.
I want to be there. Yeah, I want to be there 7 o'clock showing or 9 o'clock showing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to see Joker as fast as possible.
I want to record the entire movie and put it up on the internet.
I still always love the thought of like somebody recording a Rise of Skywalker stars. Dun, 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 dun. Everybody, welcome to MGF Podcast in a theater.
This guy Riot Studios said, "I stand what I said before. You guys are whack." I don't know if he's talking about us and the audience, but that's our first MGF Live hater. I'm putting him on a pedestal.
Oh, nice.
I'm just kidding. Dude, I am so excited for this movie.
No, that's right. Ryan's a friend of my my Tyler Haney. He's joking. But
dude,
yeah.
Can we get Joaquin Phoenix on the podcast?
Yes, we will just we'll go to the Oscars next year and be like, Joaquin! Be like, MGF Podcast! And he will just well, usually what actors do is they ignore people, so he wouldn't even look our way.
But Ross, you're an international celebrity. They steal your figure ideas in China. You're international, dude. They steal your figure ideas in China.
That is
true. Thanos? You're international, dude.
I can't deny that. Dude, that is always the craziest thing about YouTube, when somebody's just like, oh yeah, I live in Singapore and I've been watching you for 9 years. I'm like, I don't even know if I can point to Singapore on a map.
Go back to school then, MG.
No, I'm kidding. I could probably find it. No, I'm kidding. Let's be real. I couldn't point to Singapore on a map. But
YouTube,
you know, or like somebody recently was like Indonesia. They were like, yeah, I watched your channel, hello from Indonesia. I'm like, oh my god,
that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, dude.
Like, jokes aside, let's talk about YouTube, because this could change the face of MGF forever. Let's be overly dramatic to get people scared.
Yeah, so this is quite a deep and heavy conversation to have really quickly.
Guys, MGF needs you to donate on his Patreon. Donate $650 a month, because if you do that, he can finally build the MGF mansion in Hollywood Hills, and that'd be sick.
No, so At the start of the month, I wasn't really paying attention. I kind of always assumed because I'm a Lego channel, a lot of stuff doesn't affect me. Like when the YouTube adpocalypse started happening, that was the only one that really affected my channel. It affected all channels when advertisers started pulling out and YouTube had to really crack down on how advertisements paid creators.
That was awful.
And then you had the second adpocalypse, the demonetization adpocalypse. That was the second one that would attack news channels and people covering sensitive topics or cursing and basically just kind of.
And that's family friendly.
Basically, it just like that was the second adpocalypse that just kind of demonetized YouTube's edge.
Yeah.
Right. Any of the serious stuff, any of the controversial stuff, any of the cursing, all got demonetized. So that was the second adpocalypse. That was like early last year or something. This year we could be heading for number 3, and this one could actually be affecting thousands, maybe even over 1 million. I don't know how many toy YouTubers there are now.
Dude, a majority of YouTube is toy YouTubers. A majority. Like children's channels.
A large portion.
No, I'm pretty sure it's a majority of channels that actually upload. Like I know channels that have over 1 million subscribers are predominantly kids channels. So that's going to affect like 60% or something like that of all YouTubers over 1 million subscribers.
So guys, if you don't know what happened, YouTube had a big problem with the FTC. And the FTC basically fined them $170 million for distributing advertising in a pretty shady way. And basically, kids would go on YouTube. YouTube would collect data regardless of their age, give that to advertisers, and then advertisers would be able to, run their ads and target those interests, and they would get targeted ads.
For context, really quick, targeted ads are illegal if they are directed towards children. That's why if you turn on like Nick Jr. or something like that, they have commercials but not advertisements. They'll advertise their upcoming shows, what's up next, and that's it. Like if you watch Boomerang, I watch a lot of Boomerang now because the Flintstones is haha funny. There are no ads on that channel. So keep that in mind when thinking about all of this. There are laws in place that protect the youth of America.
Yeah, and this is kind of again a heavy conversation to have. But basically, guys, I mean, there's a very real threat to toy YouTubers right now with this whole situation because YouTube came out with a statement that they're going to be doing a pretty big change in 4 months. So channels that are very clearly child-oriented and meant for kids, channels like those big channels with millions and millions of subscribers that get millions and millions per video with the big colorful thumbnails and, the family channel, like all those channels like that are 100% going to be affected by this.
Yeah.
And the big effect is demonetization. We are talking demonetization across the board. And building up to this, if YouTube doesn't start being very clear about who's getting demonetized, I am going to start to mention it more and more on my channel. Because if I and other Lego YouTubers get hit by this, I will, like a lot of us are going to have to move to, not move, but place a heavy focus on Patreon. Patreon could wind up being the only solution if Lego YouTubers are facing demonetization across the board. Now, guys, if all this demonetization of toy reviews and toys channels and families channels does wind up affecting us, and it doesn't just go for me, it would affect me, it would affect, YouTubers like Jang. It would affect Justin, Ryan, Just Too Good and M&R. It would affect Brick Attack. It would affect Brick Vault. It would affect that Neo guy doing the Avengers stop motions because it's all Lego. Lego is a kid's toy at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's so hard, Ross. Your channel is an art channel. It's not a Lego channel. It's only a Lego channel when you post set reviews, but it's an art channel. That's why I mean, if you get flagged, then there will be a huge issue. I think there will be a massive outcry from everyone if art channels are getting stricken down by this dude. I mean, it's
Now,
I mean,
Tait,
the fan outcry is going to become more powerful than you could ever imagine.
Listen, man. I mean, the statements they've given initially, following the lawsuits settlement and them coming to terms with the FTC and having to pay the 170, they've released a very simple statement in very broad strokes, saying this is what we're going to do. This is the general summary. It's going to affect people. We're giving people 4 months to adjust. But there is this gray area created. That is always where the problems lie, the gray area. You cannot just implement a mass change that demonetizes all Lego YouTubers or all toy YouTubers when there are a lot of toy YouTubers who do not and have never exclusively pandered to kids like those larger channels that 100% do. So the problem and the fear and the anxiety that is me, and are they going to communicate with us more as we move toward potentially the greatest YouTube adpocalypse the Lego community has ever faced on the platform? Or are they going to be aware of all of this? Are they going to kind of zero in on what the algorithms and what the AI will go around demonetizing? Because this is basically going to be like a content ID system, but for like what YouTube does for copywriting music. There's going to be an automatic system that's going to go around flagging things. And Tait, the thing about like news channels and those guys like Philip DeFranco or Timcast or anyone doing news, they don't get demonetized every time. It's an ongoing struggle. And so if I and other Lego YouTubers and toy YouTubers and Nintendo YouTubers affected by this, who does not directly pander to just kids, always has to wrangle with this, always has to submit appeals for every damn video we make, or most of them, it will absolutely affect the revenue we make. And that's the whole thing with this potential YouTube Adpocalypse 3.0 now targeting toys channels. Because if this happens, we're all going to have to start placing a heavy emphasis on Patreon. And it would be something similar to Star Wars Explained, right? It would be a very similar model to that. The revenue would just have to be built up yet again, but somewhere else. And all Lego YouTubers' livelihoods would be threatened, and we would be set at least a year or two back as far as building that revenue back up. And guys, that revenue is important because many of us do this as a job. I am looking to finally turn this into my job because there is nothing else I would rather be doing. There is no other series of videos I'd rather do. There's nothing really else in the world that inspires me or fires me up more than recreating my favorite characters from pop culture in Lego. It has been an interest of mine that has never died. I have never confronted Dark Ages. There has never been more than a week or two where I have not wanted to make a new figure or work on a new figure since I was 9 years old. So even if this does take a turn for the worst and content does start to slow down again from me or any other YouTubers, it wouldn't be the end because I would do this even if I wasn't making a dime. So it's a pretty heavy conversation. It is scary. If this does happen in 4 months, it would definitely greatly affect not even just me, but my family and a lot of other YouTubers. And it's a scary situation. I can only hope that YouTube understands they cannot implement such a broad and overgeneralized change that affects so many thousands and hundreds and thousands of Lego toy YouTubers or just toy YouTubers, because then they lose money. Because I guarantee you, over 100,000 toy YouTubers or so, or however many, suddenly losing all monetization pretty much across the board,
Oh, that's horrible. That's
YouTube
absolutely horrible.
YouTube will lose a lot more than the 170 they were because of this. And I hope they know that. And I hope that we can put our faith that a multi-billion-dollar company like them would know that. Imagine that, Tate. In 4 months, they implement this change. It's broad. It's overgeneralized. They're demonetizing LEGO YouTubers. They're demonetizing Nintendo YouTube. They're demonetizing Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, any big toy YouTubers or any content that even comes relatively close to pertaining to kids.
Okay.
They would lose so much money.
YouTube got screwed over by the Adpocalypse. That's why they put all the over-monetization in Adpocalypse 2, Electric Boogaloo. What do you think is going to happen if they start striking down almost every channel on the platform because of the fact that they're not allowed to curse, you're not allowed to post mature content, everything has to be family friendly, but that only goes so far. You have this very distinct gray area where you can play like Legend of Zelda and that's it. You can talk about PG-13 movies and that's it. It's horrible.
Yeah, because
and you can make the argument that both of those things are marketed for young kids, right? It's really, really difficult. So I think that they're striking down channels of children that are like 5 years old and under, or like maybe like 8 years old and under. I think that teenage content will be okay. But what is teenage content? Mario Brothers can be seen as like, teenage content or as young kid content. Doesn't matter. It's super general.
What AI are they going to build in the next 4 months that is going to be able
Susan. It's just going to be Susan. She said, nah. They're going to flip a coin.
Yeah.
Flip a coin. They're going to flip a coin. Susan's going to flip a coin after every video that pops up.
Because have I been demonetized, Tim Sargent? No. But I'm saying I and other LEGO YouTubers certainly could in 4 months when this change comes in. And listen, man, when this happened to YouTube news channels and those that cover media, controversial topics, and heavy stuff, like politics, like political channels, listen, man, they're not making their money off YouTube anymore. None of them are.
Patreon, merch, and then advertisements that are third party advertisements like promos.
And that could be something that could be something that I would have to push very heavily on moving forward in the future if suddenly demonetization is completely taken away from all toy YouTubers. It is a scary anxiety-producing idea. I'm going to start bringing it up in future videos here and there as I move forward in the next 4 months with the endgame showcases and videos and all other video making, to just kind of prepare everyone to say, hey, this might happen, and if it does, I'm usually not one to ask for help in that big of a way, but I would really need everybody's help, and so would every other LEGO YouTuber and toy YouTuber on the platform. Because then we could start disappearing. Because real life shows up at the door and asks for rent, and asks for utility bills, and asks for you to sustain a livelihood. And if YouTube takes away our ability to do that, people don't have a choice. And if they can't make the Patreon thing work, it's game over.
But
so
guys,
if this,
let's end on an optimistic note because we do have to start wrapping up. Optimistically, guys, Ross is not going anywhere. If you guys care, I'm not going anywhere. Worst case scenario, we're gonna try to start uploading more on the podcast channel. So this is just kind of a worst case scenario thing. We daily upload every day, and half the videos are shit. But that's okay.
I wouldn't be able to daily upload every day.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm talking about specifically the podcast channel of me just going on the streaming software while you're asleep and just saying, "What's up,
hey
guys?
What's up? How's your day? What happened today? Nothing.
You guys want to see my lizards?" No, but guys, I mean, content will still be flowing. I told Ross that if he needs a helping hand, I'll be here, so you might see some Tait videos. You won't see Tait videos on the MGF channel. That's not happening. But maybe. In the alternate reality, who knows?
Or Tait, I will move to California and we'll start a fitness.
Oh my gosh. Guys, okay, if you guys don't know, I'm very into fitness, and I send Ross fitness tips sometimes. So Let's just do that, Ross. Perfect. We'll pump iron in Muscle Beach. Is that kid friendly though? Is that advertiser friendly?
I mean, if minorities appear and it may, if they like a kid runs by in the background. Whoop.
Did you just say minorities?
Yeah, dude.
No,
Or
minors.
Minors.
Oh, is that
Hey, man.
a Mexican man in your frame? I'm sorry, bro. Demonetized. That's horrible.
Oh god.
Oh gosh, I can make that
Minors.
joke. I can make that joke because I'm half Mexican. All right.
Minors.
Pero hablar español.
Minorities, minors. The words are not mutually exclusive or like similar, but they do sound similar.
But guys, Ross isn't going anywhere. The
Minorities
podcast
aren't going anywhere.
No, minors aren't going. Well, minors might be going off of you,
Off the platform.
off the platform. But guys,
Minorities.
that's it for the MGF podcast. I have to go shower a baby. I think that's in the description of what I'm doing.
And now we just got demonetized.
Okay. Oh shoot! Golly. Well, there's people at my house that I've never met before, and I still haven't taken a shower yet. So
And this channel isn't monetized anyway, so.
No, I mean, even if we were to monetize it, I would just embezzle funds and say, sorry, MGF. I want the 3 cents we made from this video. I'm just kidding, guys. But anyway, background noise is getting worse. Ross.
That's gonna do it.
Yep, that's gonna do it. Not a kid. Oh wait, no, Ross. So we don't get screwed over. Let me just hit you with a second one.
Thank you for fucking coming to the podcast today. This is not a kid-friendly channel. And remember, guys, we are inevitable. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.
Bye.